Why is it so important for people to do their blood work?
Because many times we won't necessarily feel what's happening in our body until we're pretty far along in the disease state process.
Even though I think I'm pretty healthy, I want to get more optimized, more energy for my kids as I have them older. But it's really cool to see. And what I tell people is, like, hey, this is my doctor. He actually cares.
This is Captain Curt with Captain Capital.
All right, welcome back to this episode of the Captain Curt Show. I'm here with my doctor, Dr. Adam Silberman, who's a functional medicine doctor, also known as a longevity doctor or a naturopathic doctor. We've been working together for about 9 months. We met at a Fortitude Wellness event where we got to drive Porsches and chat with really elite people and like-minded people. And it was so great to have such a long conversation that, I was drawn to Adam. He really cares about what he does, and I was actually searching for a doctor to focus on health and longevity, and we just hit it off. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely, Curt.
Yeah, happy to have you. Glad we live close by, even though we don't hang out too often, but every once in a while we get to see each other at health events, which is really fun to listen to your expertise, as it's, not my expertise. I don't know if I ever told you, but I was formerly a fitness trainer back in my 20s at Club One up in San Francisco and some 24-hour fitness stuff. But I was very young and very fit. But so I've always been involved in fitness, and weights have always been a part of my life. I was an athlete, and but the health and the food and the lab work that we've done and the blood, I never had any knowledge on that. So it's been really fun to have you as, on my side as my personal doctor, really. But the first question I got for you is, why is it so important for people to do their blood work?
If we can't measure it, we can't manage it. And as we get older, we have to take regular looks under the hood to understand what's going on, because many times we won't necessarily feel what's happening in our body until we're pretty far along in the disease state process. For example, most people won't feel their blood pressure being significantly elevated over time until they start to have some sort of a symptom like a headache come on board, or they start to notice other types of changes in their physiology. And at that time, arguably, their blood pressure has been high for much longer than we would want. Same thing goes for your blood sugar, right? People can stay in the pre-diabetic or diabetic range for years without having any significant signs or symptoms. And if we can look in the blood work, we catch that right away. We can correct it immediately. So we recommend everybody get regular lab work. We think 2 to 3 times a year is really important, because not only are we looking at what's happening at that point in time with the blood work, but if we can check it at least twice a year, we can start to see trends. So even if you're tracking within what would be considered normal ranges, if we're seeing upward trends at every 4 or 6 months of lab testing, we can take some immediate action. Like, hey, look, your blood sugar is trending up, right? We've got to do some things to course correct that so we don't go into the pre-diabetic range, or we don't go into the diabetic range. We can really stay ahead of it. If we're tracking your labs every 4 to 6 months, right, over the years, we can really see some powerful longitudinal data on you and understand and personalize what we're doing with you in a way that can really impact your long-term health and well-being.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, I recall I only got my blood tested once before working with you. And I think my general health care provider, which I hardly went to, I get annual physicals and medicals for being a pilot. They don't dive deep. They take your blood pressure, they take your weight, they urine test you, check your heart. We do EKGs, but that's kind of it. It's real simple. They ask you a couple questions. Hey, what do you do for exercise just to keep your mind right, and all these things. They test your eyes. But I kind of never really went to my general doctor, because I never felt like the annual checkups they do, I never felt I needed it, because I got it through the aviation medical. but I wanted more. So I got my blood work done right before I had my son, actually the same month in December. My girlfriend pushed it. She goes, oh, you need to go to the skin doctor and get your all. I go, okay, all right, I'm going to go, and I got my blood work done. And to my surprise, there was a couple things like we talked about also is my triglycerides were high because I ate too much ice cream and I drink too much soda. But then there was like no result out of it. He's like, hey, just eat less sugar. We'll see you next time. And there wasn't any response to it. It wasn't, hey, what do you want to plan? What do you want out of life or anything? So I was looking for more personalized, someone that actually cared is the way I put it. And with you, we got my blood tested right away and we got to implement a plan, which really, in my opinion, getting your blood work done is preventative. And for disease and things that you can read off indicators and actually make a plan to get more healthy, and I think that's what most people, the education maybe isn't out there yet. So with the blood work, we also did a calcium test for me on my heart. My dad had calcium issues, and the way he found that was a new doctor. His doctor retired, he got a new doctor, and he goes, hey, we should get this new calcium test. People are getting it. And he had like 90% blockage in an artery, and it was major. I don't know if I remember, his calcium score was 1,500. And he said 300 is bad. So anyways, that saved my dad's life. And when I met you, he said, hey, there's a simple test for hereditary reasons. It wasn't really a health reason, it's hereditary from what I've learned. And we got a calcium score. So how important is it that, I'm 43. So at what age do you think people should get the heart scan or a calcium score test?
In men in particular, women historically are just inherently more focused on their health. They're a little more tuned in to their bodies, and they're a little bit more on point with taking action. That just seems to be the case in my practice, and my colleagues say the same thing. It's not uncommon when a baby's on the way or a big life change is happening for guys to start to then look inward, or to have their partners be like, hey, look, let's check under the hood. And then we start to identify things, and there's a motivation there to create change. Cardiac imaging is something that year on year becomes more readily available from a location standpoint. We can get cardiac imaging now pretty much anywhere in the country, and it's extremely more affordable than it's ever been before. Those two factors, I think, have been sort of what has been limiting cardiac imaging in its role in primary prevention, because it's been sort of reserved for cases of existing cardiovascular disease, primarily ordered by cardiologists. And if you didn't have already existing disease, you weren't getting these imagings done, right? Maybe you were going and getting a stress test where they put you on the treadmill, you run the EKG, and they're looking for sort of immediate signs of an upcoming risk for a cardiovascular event, right? But we can use cardiac imaging to get an idea of like a 20-year, a 30-year outlook on how you're handling, right? How you're plaquing, how you're not plaquing, the quality of your arteries, the blood flow. This gives us an incredible insight into the health of your heart. And when we pair that with blood work, right, we get a really good idea of how to sort of manage and track progress. I think that without the cardiac imaging, we're missing a key area of evaluation for people. I mean, look at the statistics, right? Like, if we were able to evaluate in its entirety cardiovascular disease risk in people using the annual screenings that we use currently, right, we would be preventing a lot more heart disease. Like, we're not preventing heart disease. Heart disease is still the number one cause of death in men and women, right? It is not like decreasing in frequency or severity. Like, we are not doing a good enough job as a medical community in evaluating people for cardiac disease and then implementing what needs to happen to curb it. I think cardiac imaging does both, right? One, it gives you a picture of your heart. And that's a lot different than looking at numbers on a lab test. Right? If I can go, hey, look, Curt, your LAD, right, this artery in your heart, is showing signs of plaque at this percentage. That is uncharacteristic for a man in their 40s. In fact, we're also seeing changes in the flow of blood in that artery. that puts you at an increased risk of this percentile, right? That's a very different conversation to like, well, like, look, your cholesterol is a little bit high, your HDL is a little low, your LDL is a little bit elevated, but like overall you look pretty fit and you're losing weight. And so we're just gonna like keep an eye on it and we're gonna watch, right? If that was effective, we would not see cardiovascular disease being as prevalent as it is, because that's what the majority of clinicians are telling their clients, right? So we've got to do more. And I think that, I don't think I know, because we've been doing it in our clinical practice for a number of years now. Like, we have staved off a number of cardiovascular disease events, for sure, 100%. The amount of people that we run imaging on whose lipid panels, right, these cholesterol markers are like, yeah, you're okay, like you're skating along. We get this image and it comes back with disease. It's a lot higher than I anticipated in the beginning, which is why I'm such a strong advocate for it now. Because like, my own story of how I got into medicine surrounds my dad. And my dad had a cardiovascular disease event and died when he was 52 years old.
Wow,
right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, out of the blue. I was 24 years old and living in Australia at the time. I had spoken to him a week before he had passed away. Thank God we had a loving and connected conversation. I don't know what I would do if we had not, right? You know how it is with family. Sometimes it's the best and sometimes it's hard. Yeah. But I remember coming back home to San Diego and seeing him for the last time, which was about 4 months before he passed away, looking him in the eye and being like, Dad, something is not right with your health. I wasn't a doctor at the time, so I didn't really know, but his eyes were bloodshot. He had put on a bunch of weight. He was still happy-go-lucky, Craig. Big hugs, big hands. He's 6'3", just big huggy guy. But I was like, look, I looked him in the eyes. I said, Dad, I'm really concerned. I don't want the next time I come home to be for your funeral. And it was.
Man.
And at that point, I decided that I don't want any family to have to go through a process like that unnecessarily, and committed myself to a life of service in healthcare so that I could work with individuals like yourself and families to bring in this type of preventative screening, this type of whole health care, and not just talking about it, but doing it, living the medicine and supporting people in living that life, so that we don't have another family that has to go without Grandpa Craig around, right? That's really hard,
Yeah, that's got to be tough. I think it's a cool story, even though it's a sad one, that's what it took for you to decide this is where the path I'm going to go down. And you know what I tell people that ask me, hey, who's your doctor that you're working with? I tell people all the time, I hired a longevity doctor. I want to live a longer, healthier life. Even though I think I'm pretty healthy, I want to get more optimized, more energy for my kids as I have them older. But it's really cool to see. And what I tell people is, like, hey, this is my doctor. He actually cares. That's the difference. Because my general healthcare doctor, I don't even have one now because I'm not going to go to them. Like, I'm going to call Dr. Adam or email Dr. Adam, get an appointment if I'm feeling pains or anything else. But being a pretty healthy individual, we're primarily focused on my blood work, getting my sugars down. Like, I drink less alcohol, but it's cool, hearing that story, because I didn't know that story. And my dad could have, they told him, like, you were a walking heart attack. And what they told him is, the first sign of a heart attack is oftentimes death.
Right.
It's not like, hey, I got chest pain, I have left arm pain, which is sure an indicator, but my dad's good friend just had a heart attack, died. That was it. And so another question for you would be, at what age should men or women, I agree with you where you said women are really on track with their health. I agree with that, and that's what got me back on track. But at what age should a man start doing lab work and doing heart and looking into their heart?
Look, if I had a magic wand, I would say that every guy in their 30s should start getting looked at, because then we'd have a baseline of where things are at. Imagine what we would have seen in your lab work when you were in your 20s, 30s, peak physical condition, training, right, for whatever, competitions or whatever you were doing, right? Like we could see, okay, well, that was where I was at this point in time. I talk a lot in the medical community about what I call like the lost decades. The 40s and the 50s are the lost decades for health and well-being in both men and women. We are in that stage of life committed to building our families. We're committed to building businesses. We're committed to community impact. We're doing a lot of things, and our time is thin. What we aren't typically doing is dedicating time and energy and intention to our own health and longevity, right? We're skimping on sleep. Maybe we're putting other nutrition priorities in front of our own. We're doing some sacrifice in terms of stress management and quality of life for the greater good, right? Which is we're raising kids, we've got a lot on. I know for a fact that if we focus in starting in our 40s, definitely in our 50s, on these preventative health and wellness strategies, right? We start talking about goals. We start working on delivering healthcare in and around your goals, right? That take into account your family history, your blood work. We start implementing some strategies in your family. We will see in your 60s, your 70s, your 80s, right? A significantly different outcome. And it is a lot harder. It's not impossible by any means. We do it all the time because these are the lost decades. We get people in their 60s all the time that are like, look, our kids are older. We're ready to focus on this. We understand our own mortality. We don't want to be the grandparents that are sitting on the couch. We want to be the grandparents that are on the floor playing with our kids, right? We do it all the time. But if I could have grabbed them in their 40s and been like, hey, let's get on these things now in this way, they would just be exponentially ahead of the curve.
And I agree with you. And I think some things are irreversible. So you don't want to put them off. And I will say you hit it on the head. At 38, I was very fit. I worked out. I cooked every meal. I was very focused. Then it started falling off. And I literally gained 35 pounds, not overnight, over time, 5 pounds a year, whatever it ended up being. Because like you said, I had kids. I bought a bigger house. I was remodeling a house. I built a business. You want to provide. That's what happened to me. I shifted. I sold my nice boat. I did this. I wanted to make more money and I wanted free time. But my health and fitness literally are the two things I sacrificed. Nothing else. Those were the two things. I worked out less, I surfed less, and now, I want all those back. And those are more important than the business or anything else. And that's why I think it's really important. I like to tell people also, like getting the blood work and having doctor visits and reviews and putting a plan together. We're doing every 6 months right now, but now we're going to bump it up to maybe do 4 times a year. But because I'm very focused and I want that to be really, really optimized. But what I think is great about getting blood work and working with a doctor is there's accountability. You're not the doctor saying, hey, you need to do that. You're putting the plan together and go, hey, your lab results are going to tell us how you're doing. And we just reviewed my labs. A lot of it was great improvements. I didn't see anything that was too bad except for, like you said, healthy fats. I haven't been eating fish. I need to focus. So I may have to do some omega fish oil. But I loved everything I'm seeing. So now I'm more encouraged to go harder, and it's not sacrificing a lot. It's just eating less junk, eating less ice cream. So I think people should do that, and it gives them a marker. I mean, you talk about that a lot. Let's ask another question. How about, I didn't sleep very well for a while, having babies and little kids, and now I'm starting to sleep better. So how important is a good night's sleep overall for your health?
I mean, sleep is where we build muscle from working out during the day. Sleep is where our brain, right, cleans itself out from all of the metabolic activities that it's done during the day. Sleep is where we build, grow, and restore. It is critical. And I know in pilots, I think your listeners are a significant amount are pilots. This is shift work, right? There's disruptions in sleep is kind of part of the job, right? Particularly commercial pilots. And there are certainly strategies that you can put in place that can help to minimize the burn that has, but that certainly is a risk factor, particularly in pilots or first responders, ER nurses, people that are working shifts, particularly night shifts. We use biometric tools, like I'm wearing an Oura Ring. This is one tool that we can use to track people's sleep quality and how it's impacting them on a daily basis. if we can prioritize it, it's really important. For pilots on their off windows, we've got particular strategies that we can employ to help you get back on cycle, to not catch up per se, but to optimize your sleep when you can. So for those that are working shifts, we got to try to maximize it from when we can. For those of us that have the benefit of not living in that type of a professional environment, prioritizing sleep is just non-negotiable, has to happen. Look, this idea of like we need 8 hours or we need 7 hours or 6 hours or, otherwise, like that can be individual to a lot of degree. Okay? And we can use these tracking tools like the Oura Ring, which I'd recommend. It's a couple $100. I'd recommend people do it. If you don't like wearing rings, you can keep it on your bedside table and just put it on at night. Leave it there, take it off in the morning, right? Track your tools. And that is just an incredible way that we can understand how you're sleeping, how it's affecting a marker called your heart rate variability, which is a marker of how well you're managing and accommodating stress, how your resting pulse is tracking, right? If you're getting a good low standard pulse throughout the evening, right? Heartbeat, that's important. These are all signs that you're restoring and recovering. Now, for people that have erratic sleep, there's things you can do during the day to help to manage your stress load and your recovery programming. Mm-hmm. The thing I recommend for anyone that's working out is you can tack on like a minute to 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes of breath work after you work out each time. So you're probably gonna go train because you have a gym here after we finish our pod, right? What I would suggest you do is after you finish your strength training program, you take 3 minutes and maybe you do a series of what's called box breathing, right? 4-second inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold. You just do that. Do 3 to 4 sets of 10 box breaths, right? With a little pause in between. It takes about 3 minutes. You'll notice a significant change in what's called sort of your sympathetic nervous system that is going to be extremely welcomed by your body, and it's going to set you up for the rest of the day, and it will help you sleep better at night. So I recommend the box breath for people as a way to sort of regulate, right, the sort of stress response that can sometimes be aggravated or upregulated when people are having, right, non-ideal or optimal sleep, right? We all have, if you have kids, it's not like, you can't just, most of us really in this position don't have total control over our sleep. So you can use the box breath. The other breath tool that I think works really well is called the physiologic sigh. The physiologic sigh is an inhale with an additional inhale and then a full exhale. So it kind of looks like this, like you take an inhale. And it just calms things down, right? Like you might have just felt calmer just from that experience, right? Inhale, full inhale, and then whoom, out. You just do that once or twice in between meetings, like maybe when you get home from work, if you're like, oh man, like I'm having trouble transitioning from my work life to my family life. My work life, I'm like, go, 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 I'm alpha. And then I got to go in home and lock into a different zone, right? In the car, do a box breath, do some physiologic sigh. You walk in, you're in a completely different headspace. Your parasympathetic nervous system is optimized. You're in a good spot. Those two strategies are really valuable. The only organ we can control in here is really our breath, right? So let's use our breath to do things for us, right? To support a headspace that is ideal for the environment that we want to be in, right?
I like it because I don't do any breath work. I've heard it's really good, but haven't experimented. And I live a life where you're right. I work out real hard. I'm sweaty. I need to recover, change, shower, and get right to work. And when I leave my office, it's usually a phone call or two until I walk in my door. Now I go into dad mode. I turn the phone off. I actually remove it I set it down somewhere else. That's just a change I've made, which is great. But you're right. It's kind of like how you deal with stress, right? And so the gym helps with stress, but it sounds like the breath work does as well.
Yep. And for your pilots, right, you have a lot of these windows where you have little moments of downtime programmed into your work schedule. There is moments of downtime. If we can use those moments to do some breath work, right? Look, if you want to put on some headphones to check out a little bit, like some noise canceling headphones, you can kind of build a strategy around it, right? But the idea is you kind of just put this little barrier around yourself. and you give yourself a moment. Doing that consistently, making that a habit is going to make you more productive. You're going to feel better about the things that you're doing. You can still do the same things. You're going to feel better about it. You're going to feel better about your work. You're going to feel better about how you spent your time with your family. Like the feeling of your life is going to improve. And it is literally 3 to 5 minutes, right? A couple of times a day when you would be waiting around to do something else anyways. Bringing it in, it's a tough thing for guys particularly to bring on board, I've noticed, because it's like soft and wishy-washy, and there's this whole perception around like, oh, I'm gonna do breath work, I'm gonna like meditate, and it's like kind of like hokey or woo-woo or whatever, right? But I'll tell you right now, like we work with professional athletes that have performance coaches, and guess what they are doing all the time, right? They're visualizing and they're doing breath work. Every single one, right? Those are key strategies, right? Stanley Cup just happened, right? Like we know, we work with some of the players, right? That's what they're into. They're doing breath work to manage and optimize their performance alongside visualization and other strategies, right? We can bring that stuff in to our life, not to like perform at our best per se, but to enjoy our lived experience to the fullest, which is like important.
Part
right?
of life, right? Or
yeah.
big part of life.
I don't want you looking back on your 40s thinking I missed time with my kids or I missed this thing, right? And that's where having, it's important to have your primary care physician. It's important to have specialists in your life. It's important, obviously, to get your testing every year to make sure that you're fit to fly, you're fit to do your job. That's like kind of non-negotiable, but you're not going to get the same level of guidance, advice, and support from those types of physicians as you do with a functional medicine physician, a naturopathic doctor, a functional trained coach who works with someone like me, right? We're focused on your goals. We're targeting your goals. That is not how sort of the traditional medical model is set up, right? And that's not to any fault. Like, I'm not saying that this is bad and this is good. I would suggest that you need both. Mm-hmm. You need both in your life from an early age.
Because they're different. They're two different things. And one thing that I think about general healthcare is it's a lot of times you are going to the doctor when you don't feel well. Something's not right. And it A, may be too late for something, or B, it is, hey, here's some medicine to fix it, and that's it. Right. Where I come to you with an issue, and it's more like, okay, let's change your sleep, let's change your workout, let's change your diet, and you want all the info. They don't necessarily, in my opinion, always want the info, and it's really just big farm. Like, okay, here's a pill that's going to help that. Yeah. And that's just not necessarily. Some things need a pill; they have to have it. But for me, it's like I want to focus on preventative. And I feel like that's so much more what you get with more of a private healthcare doctor like you. And I think it's great that, yeah, even though I have insurance, I literally still don't go to my normal doctor because for me, I'm getting enough through you. And my actually, I get tested now that I'm over 40. It's every 6 months for my pilot medical. So, but like I said, they don't go too deep. I mean, I get an EKG and which is all great for my heart stuff.
But they won't let you fly if you're obese, right?
Correct.
And there's certain health conditions where they're like, hey, sorry, you got to fix this. Mm-hmm. And we just don't want you ever to get in that position.
Yeah.
And it's to no fault of any medical facility, right? Medical providers in general are inherently trying to do good. They're trying to help. They want to help. Mm-hmm. Like there are a lot of other positions and jobs in the world that smart people can do that are easier, less stress, more stable, higher earning than being a doctor. Like we'll just lay that out there, right? This is a labor of love. So, it's not about caring or not caring. It's just the framework in which they operate. And you're lucky because you have me and I can do both. You call me and you're like, Adam, I've got a fever. This is what's happening, right? I can see you virtually, or you come by your home and I can prescribe you the medication you need for immediate resolution, right? But if you're like, hey, Adam, this is like the 3rd time I've been sick this year, or the 4th time I've been sick this year, I've been on 4 sets of antibiotics, we're going to do some other things alongside that to make sure that your gut microbiome is regulated again, that we're not think that this isn't a sign that you might be you might be so stressed out and sleeping so poorly and flying so much and doing so many deals and all the podcasts and all the things and the new kid, right? Who's exposing you to all these infections, right? That it's like, hey, look, man, we got to look a little bit wider than this because you've been on 4 sets of antibiotics this year. Like, we got to figure out a way for your immune system to manage. And so that's kind of where I think it's valuable to have multiple providers in your life, right? Mm-hmm. If you need that type of support, that urgent or emergent care from a primary care physician, they are excellent at that. That's what they've been trained to do. You come in with heartburn and reflux, they know what medicine to give you, right? Then you come see us, right? I mean, we may give you medicine too like that, but what we're not going to do is keep you on it for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. That is for sure, right? We're going to make some changes and we're going to get to the root cause, which is, I know, like everyone says root cause, but it's like we're going to look at what is aggravating that symptom, and we are going to take a multimodal approach so that we can either use the lowest amount of medication possible, right, or we will eliminate that medication altogether. Right?
Yeah.
And that is what medicine, I think, should be for everyone. Mm-hmm. And the manner in which that is delivered for you as an individual can be unique, right? There are certainly primary care doctors out there. We've trained some through the Institute for Functional Medicine, and they implement this in their insurance-based family medicine practices. They've got coaches, and they're fighting the good fight to do this, right? But unfortunately, right, the majority of insurance companies, maybe they have a program, a nutrition lifestyle program or something, but the effectiveness of it is not there. Like, our clients with our physicians and our coaches, I mean, you saw it. Like, I mean, how we met in October. You started working realistically over the holidays in December, which, as everybody knows, is a time where we want to enjoy and we're not 100% compliant during the holidays. So really, it's like from January to now. I mean, like, you've seen significant changes in your health, your well-being. Mm-hmm. Your ability to accommodate all the work that you've done. I mean, right? Like, I know you funded at least one real estate deal, if not more.
We recently sold a couple that were high stress, that were pain in the butt.
Sure.
I wanted to remove the stress from my life.
Sure.
So we sold a couple. Yeah, we closed on 2 big commercial deals. And I mean, a lot of those take phone calls every day with investors and permits. And
I know. I mean, I was on at least one of the information live webinars, right? Plus, you've got the podcast. You have a new kid, right? And you've been able.
I'm doing too much. So I'm cutting back.
And you said over the last 5 years, you had about a 30-pound weight gain, and you've had about a 30-pound weight loss in the last 5 months.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because there's this, like, the people that were my mentors always gave me this kind of analogy, because you always want to tell someone when they come and see, okay, doc, like, how long is it going to take for me to get better? Is always the question, right? Regardless of the condition, how long is it going to take? And it's interesting because, like, a lot of the people that have mentored me over the years have been like, look, Adam, for every year someone's had an issue, it's going to be about a month to a month and a half for you to start to unwind it. So if someone's had an issue for 10 years, it's going to be at least 10 months or so till you see a dramatic shift, right? Which sounds like a long time, but it's interesting because you had about 4 or 5 years of progressive change, and in about 4 or 5 months, we saw a significant improvement. Yeah. So it's kind of fun when sometimes those things like play out, right?
Cool timeline. I think everybody varies, like you say. How motivated are you? And like, I improved my diet and exercise from 40% to 70%.
Right.
Now I'm going to try to go to 90%, and I've removed a bunch of stress from my life, which I've been tired of, right? And that's all a benefit. But now I'm going to go hard 90% for, 8 to 9 to 10 weeks because I'm going on a big surf trip that I haven't done in 6 years. And I said, it's time to reward myself, but I want to get into optimal shape. And it doesn't mean like jacked, looking good. It means I want my body full of energy and I want to be in surfing shape, which I'm going to implement way more swimming, which I haven't been doing. Walking on the treadmill is great. And I do podcasts and books on there, and it does make a difference. I'm burning calories, right? But if I continue putting better food in my body, less sugar, removing the stress, I think will help a lot. And then we'll retest my blood work in basically 3 months from right now. So I like it as we put a little bit of a new plan together. We're going to increase my steps, increase the swimming, which is going to help my surfing. So that's like really personalized healthcare.
Yeah.
This is what I want, not necessarily what Dr. Adam thinks. He's my coach to help me get to where I want to go. If it was like, hey, I would like to be 160 pounds with less muscle and just be really lean, then you would have different input for me. But I said, no, I want to be 180 pounds. I like having a bunch of muscle and I just want to cut a little bit more weight, which is really going to come from cutting back sugar, and increasing cardio and steps.
And that's a good kind of place to parlay into, I know we wanted to talk about just in general, what would someone be thinking about doing kind of as first steps in targeting those goals, right? Because probably a lot of people are listening to this being like, oh yeah, this sounds great. I want this. I want to do something like this with someone. And it is absolutely more effective and efficient if you work with a physician like myself and a coach, right? It is worth the money 100% because you get the outcome.
I like to call it, when you have a coach, it is a shortcut. That it really is. I have a real estate mentor, a coach in the community I'm involved in. I pay $20,000 a year. That's when I signed up. It's like, wow, that's kind of a lot of money.
Yeah, it sounds like
but
it.
But what are the results going to come from that? Way more out of it.
You're accountable. You have a partner who has done it with tons of people and run the laps. Look, you paid to go to college. Mm-hmm. You paid to go to flight school. Why, when we finish our training, do we stop paying for learning? Do we stop paying for expertise? Mm-hmm. What happens there? In fact, why do we stop pushing our body to learn new things? If you think about it, there was a time in your life where you were progressively doing new and innovative things with your body. Pull-ups, push-ups, sprints, different types of swimming techniques, whatever it was, right? A sport. And then we just stop. It's not like we lose the capacity to continue to practice and learn new things, balance techniques or otherwise. Why do we not put our finances, our time and our money into places that will lead to our own personal growth and development? Why does that stop at high school or college, right? I've never understood that. And in fact, why do we stop doing that and expect ourselves to continue to evolve as a person? Parenting is like the most relevant thing on my mind right now, because I think that it's just ridiculous that we're, for whatever reason, expected to just kind of learn and know, or not even learn, like know how to parent. We're expected to know how to parent immediately when our baby comes because we were parented. And I guarantee you that everyone listening here will look back on their childhood and think about how they were parented and probably pull some good things from that, but probably also pull some things like, oh, wait, I would never want a parent like that. Or this happened when I was a child with my family that I do not want to replicate. It's like, why don't we have the blueprint? Why don't we have a guide for that, right? And why aren't we looking for a coach there? So my wife and I, we have a coach that we work with, right? It's a group of people that we get together. We have resources and access to them, and they educate us on parenting styles and techniques for each age of our child's life in growth and development. We felt like that was important. We're like, look, we want a community. We want to change the narrative in our own life. We want to be empowered. How do we do that, right? Through books and through community, and we put the money towards it, right? There is this thing with health where everyone is paying so much money for healthcare that they're like, look, dude, doc, like I'm paying for healthcare. What am I paying all this money for? Like I'm paying every month. It's coming out of my paycheck. Or I'm stuck working for a job that I don't like because the healthcare is good and it supports my family. Or like I've got this money going towards healthcare. Like it just pains me to have to put more into this. Right? That's a friction point, certainly in all of our lives, and it's different. That's something that's kind of unique to the United States, right? In other countries, you have socialized healthcare for better or worse, but at least your bases are covered, right? You're not paying at least directly out of pocket for it.
Yeah, I think Canada has it,
Australia, different countries in Europe, Middle East. And look, there are that's not a topic we're going to talk about today in terms of the pros and cons of that style of medicine, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing it does do is it does allow for this concept of leveraging some of your disposable income towards this type of care, this type of, functional medicine, whole person, targeted and personalized.
And one thing that I found, I have health insurance that I pay for the whole family. It's great for the kids, the girlfriend, great. What I have found is the things that I want and I'm looking for, it is not covered by insurance either because it's preventative. So the calcium test was not covered by insurance, but at $200 or whatever the test was, it's a no-brainer for me. My dad had hereditary health issues with his heart that got fixed, but I wanted to prevent it. I will pay out of pocket, no problem. My healthcare provider does cover blood work once a year, but not testosterone. And it's like, okay, great. So I paid for the testosterone in December years ago, and that was $250 just for the testosterone. But through you, whatever, I can't remember what the price was, but it was like $300 for all these extra labs that you wanted to run.
Yeah.
That's deeper than my healthcare.
Yes. Yeah, we get within our private practice, right? Cash is king, right? Just like in every profession, and healthcare is part of that, right? Your insurance company will send a bill for thousands of dollars for lab tests, right? Our cash price at the lab company is hundreds of dollars. It's like, it's like a tenth of it. And I mean, look, that's another conversation we probably won't want to go into in a lot of depth today as to why that is the case and why it's put our country in a position of debt, our communities, our families in debt, right? Medical debt is a huge problem. Yeah. And there is an institutional sort of reason for that, 100%. I mean, we see it every day. Like we cash pay drugs that we recommend people pick up at the CVS, right? Are a tenth of the price of what your insurance company is. It's the same medicine. It's like, what? Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. But there is a demand for this, and there are companies out there. There's a company called Function Health. There's another company called Merrick Health, where you can go and click a few buttons, put your credit card in, and you can get the lab tests that we ran, for example, right? Through us, right? We have the same rates. We can order that. You go, you pay cash, you get it done at the same place. You get it done at LabCorp. You get it done at Quest. It's the same, just like picking up the medicine in the same place. You get these labs done at the same place. We get the results, and we can talk about some meaningful things, right? Like every man in their 40s certainly should be having their testosterone checked, and every woman. For sure. Testosterone isn't impacted with if a woman's on birth control or not. Like every woman should be having their testosterone checked, for sure. And every man. And the fact that that's not part of a standard physical exam, right, with your primary care physician is ludicrous.
So that's a great segue. Like testosterone in testosterone therapy, TRT, is widely talked about now in the last couple of years, and it wasn't before that. Right? And so why should people, male and female, get their testosterone levels checked?
Testosterone is an extremely important hormone in both male and female physiology. In fact, sort of pound for pound, women have more testosterone circulating in their body than they do estrogen or progesterone. So why is it not prioritized in female health? At the same level as estrogen and progesterone tracking, right? It's shocking to me. Testosterone is a hormone that we know significantly impacts your risk of heart disease, right? If you have adequate levels of testosterone as you age, you are less likely to have a cardiovascular disease event, full stop. So in my mind, that alone is reason enough to check. why testosterone has become such a hot button topic in the last few years is because we now, are seeking, right, and publishing trends of decreasing levels of testosterone, sort of like decade on decade in men in particular, right? And there are a number of sort of environmental and situational reasons that we could contribute to that, right? But the fact of the matter is that we're seeing it, and it is impacting male quality of life, right? We're also seeing suboptimal testosterone levels impacting female quality of life, right? Libido, mood, sort of what we call gusto, right? Motivation, enjoyment in life. Some people even comment to me like, dude, Dr. Adam, like once we got my testosterone optimized, like I was seeing colors more vividly. Like I was tasting stuff more intentionally. And I'm like, well, maybe that had to do with like the fact you were like a little more present, right? Or whatever. But the point is that like these hormones play a dramatic role in your life. Are they the only thing? No. But like, do they make a significant change when we optimize them through nutrition, lifestyle, sleep, right? Through support, whether it's herbal medicine, supplementation, medication management, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. When we dial it in, everything changes for the better. And if we can do it in the minimum effective dose, and once again, to go back to the lab work, track you consistently and track the biomarkers that we need to around safety, right? It keeps you at that optimal dose, safely, effectively for an extended period of time, and the risk, right, reduces dramatically. So in my mind, it's like it's a non-negotiable. Checking male and female hormones as part of your regular assessment is critical. And yeah, that's like kind of where it's got to be. So yeah, we use that as a key biomarker when we look at both male and female health in our practice, because also it's like what would impact naturally someone's testosterone going down, right? Mm-hmm. Poor sleep, right? Which is a key tenet of our philosophy and how we practice, right? We want sleep to be dialed in. Low muscle mass, right? So decreased muscle mass, right? Significantly high levels of stress and anxiety chronically throughout the day, right? These are areas that we know impact testosterone production in both men and women. And if we're seeing levels that are suboptimal or lower, right? Even without like direct symptoms of like, oh, my libido's down or whatever, right? It gives us an indication that we've got to be optimizing those things. And then, selfishly as a clinician, it's a lot easier for me to convince people to take these long-term lifestyle challenges with me if we then demonstrate to them through the lab work that, hey, look, like your numbers jumped up over 200 points without any type of like direct sort of replacement or otherwise, just through these sort of nutrition and lifestyle modifications. And we see that all the time, right? I like to, it's like what's your real number is kind of a question I like to ask people from the beginning. Meaning like we check your labs, like where you are now, and we get a read, but I want to know like what your number is when we've got your nutrition optimized, your training program dialed in, your sleep hygiene locked, right? You're doing your breath work, we're smiling more, you're feeling a life of purpose. I want to know what your number looks like then, right? Because that's when we can really know like, all right, this is what my current output capacity is. And then we can dial in targeted support in a much more sort of specific and surgical way.
And that's why it's important to test 2 or 3 times a year, not test once and go, oh, we're going to treat it like this. Sure, like for me, I wanted to naturally boost my testosterone. I didn't want to get on TRT after our first test. So it was my diet's improved. We changed my weights a little bit. Even though I've always lifted weights, I was more intentional. And we increased cardio because I wanted my cardiovascular and my health long term. So that's why it's really important for people to test 2 or 3 times a year after making changes. And for me, with 2 little kids at home, the sleep is really not improving. Like it's just not. As the kids get older, it's starting to get better. But when you have a 2-month-old that wakes up every 2 hours to feed and change the diaper, sleep ain't gonna improve. But now, with an almost 11-month-old, sleep's starting to get better. So I would guess in 10, 12 weeks, whenever we test again for my own good, my testosterone, I'm hoping it will go up based on improving my diet and getting a little bit harder after my cardio and swimming and things like that. And I'm reducing stress in life.
Yep.
Right? I mean, my focus right now is reducing stress.
Yeah. And we're bumping up your protein too.
100%.
So that's like a huge piece of that as well, right? We're creating some building blocks.
Yeah. So how important is like a balanced diet, even though, a balanced diet is kind of different per person and what an individual needs. And from what I've learned is your blood type, they require different kinds. Some require more protein, some require more carbs. But how important is like a balanced diet just for overall health?
Yeah. Nutrition is like one of the most sort of like, I would say, highly controversial topics in the functional medicine, naturopathic medical sort of field, because people do well on different strategies, one, and two, like food isn't just fuel. Food is family, food is culture, food is comfort. We have a food story. So there's a lot more to food than simply macronutrients, which I think colors the conversation a lot more. But there are certain tenets that we can hold our our hand up and be like, hey, this is legit. Like these are non-negotiable, right? The first one in my mind is your eating window versus your fasted window. Right? You need to be like in a fasted state, right, overnight. So that's the time you eat dinner from the time you eat breakfast, at least 12 hours. Like you have to have, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Like don't eat. Like it's going to impact your sleep. It's going to wreck your blood sugar. Like it's just not the way. Your body needs the energy, right, to do other things at night than digest your food. Like that is just number one. You want to improve your sleep, first thing, right? 3 hours before bed is your last food, right? If you wake up to pee at night, well, that sucks. How about 2 hours before bed, you stop drinking fluids, like significant amounts of fluids, right? And then see what happens, right? You'll watch your sleep scores, if you have an Oura Ring or otherwise, improve dramatically. You'll be waking up less foggy, with more energy, and you're also gonna be less hungry during the day too, because you're creating this time eating and time not eating window. That I think is just non-negotiable. You need to have protein in your diet. Now, whether you get that through plants or animals or whatever, right? Ideally, you want to be getting it through whole foods, right? Primarily versus shakes and bars. But, you've got a lot of pilots and it's not, you can't grill up a steak or cut up a bunch of, plant-based proteins when you're flying around the place. Like it's hard sometimes. So you gotta use what you can. But focusing on getting, for a guy that's like about 180 pounds, some people argue that you should be eating 1 gram of protein per every pound of your ideal body weight. I think that that's pretty hard for everybody to get to. So I would suggest that you kind of start thinking about like, 3/4 to about 80% of your ideal body weight you should be getting in grams of protein a day, ideally broken up over 3 straight meals. That's something that both men and women can align with, right? So during the eating window, you're eating kind of 3 consistent meals that have a mix of protein, fat, and carbohydrate in them, right? Snacking on chips or eating bagels or things that aren't balanced, right? Like if you're gonna have some carbohydrate, make sure you have some protein and fat with it, right? Avocado toast with smoked salmon, for example, right? Or something, right? You've got protein, a fat, and a carbohydrate versus just straight toast. There's a huge difference in what your body's going to use and how it's going to utilize that fuel, how it's going to impact your blood sugar, right? So you've got the fasted window, the fed window. You've got hitting protein macros, right? Non-negotiable, right? And then fruits and vegetables are helpful. They're helpful for people. I know that there is a significant emphasis, right, in what would be considered like high protein, low carbohydrate food programs, or even like a Paleolithic or carnivore style meal program, which works really well for a lot of people, right, which emphasizes a significant amount of animal protein and very little of basically anything else, right? Small amount of vegetables and some fruit, maybe some honey. Like fruits and vegetables for fiber intake, for phytonutrients, are helpful, right? Berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. You want a snack at your desk, right? Have some blueberries. That'll give you some energy. at low glycemic load, right? So it's not going to raise your blood sugar a ton, and it's going to give you some really nice polyphenols. It's going to help your cardiovascular disease risk, improve cognition, right? That's a much better snack for you than chips or even a protein bar, right? Like I'd rather have you eating, like a nice low glycemic load fruit, right? Pair that with maybe some coconut yogurt, or if you do dairy well, right? Some Greek yogurt, something that's low sugar. Sugar can be hidden in yogurt a lot. So look at your labels. Look at your yogurt label. Because even what looks healthy can have a lot of sugar in it. But like a low sugar yogurt with a little bit of berries, maybe some raw cashews or macadamia nuts, it's a killer snack. But yeah, so I would say your fasted window, your fed window, really dialing in the protein, and then during your fed window, right, eating 3 square meals.
Just healthy options, right?
Healthy options. And it's like I said, it's like, that sounds so simple, and everybody probably says the same thing, but to be honest, it's a lot harder than taking your supplements twice a day.
Yeah, I mean,
that's for sure.
I try to do it, but I can't always do it.
It's hard, yeah. Like, I mean, that's something that you and I talk a lot about because you're flying, right? And we're exploring different types of like meal prep options that won't spoil while you're traveling or be like at risk, like when you have a chicken dish, for example, and you're traveling, you don't want that chicken sitting out at like room temperature for more than like, an hour or so, or else it can accumulate organisms, right? So we've been talking a lot about how to optimize your nutrition programming through the use of kind of like prepared meals so that we can get you dialed in, not just when you're in town, but also when you're traveling. I think that that's a game changer for people, but like, if that's not happening, don't waste your time arguing over, well, should I be eating meat or should I not be eating meat, or should I be eating chicken, or what about the fish and the metals, and forget about it. Like, get your protein in, eat the 3 square meals with protein, fat, and carbohydrate, dial in a fed window and a fasted window, and just watch what happens just with that alone.
Yeah, from what is the myth, or is it a fact? 80% of health is based on through your diet. Like 20% exercise, like for body composition.
When we're younger, we can exercise our way out of poor nutrition, right? And you might have experienced that.
I did for sure.
Yeah. When you get into our age range, you cannot exercise your way out of a strong nutrition program. And what happens is poor nutrition negatively impacts our ability to train effectively as well, right? So in fact, I think that it's an interesting thing, because I think what I found clinically is that if I lead with nutrition and I complement that like with exercise training programming when I talk to people, compliance is lower than if I start them with the emphasis on movement training, because then they get this motivation of like, oh right, well now that I'm strength training, now that I'm doing this, I gotta get my nutrition on point. Wherein if you don't get your nutrition on point, you're not gonna hit your training goals, period. So in the beginning of my career, I would lead with nutrition first, and be like, hey, that's number one. You got to focus on this. Like, no, full stop, do not pass go, right? Now I'm like, look, let's train. Let's get you training, because it motivates people to then go to their kitchen, right? To clean up the environment in their kitchen, to put healthy options in there, clean up their home, and really focus on it. So. That's kind of how we anchor in nutrition.
Yeah, it works for me too. As I'm working out more, that's when my diet cleans up.
Yeah,
it's just a discipline thing. Like they kind of go hand in hand. And honestly, if I'm not working out, I don't make as good of meal choices. Period. Especially traveling mostly. But so people should get their blood work checked for preventative maintenance. They need to sleep as good as they can and get their sleep dialed in, especially shift workers. And let's move on to the workouts. Sure. How important is lifting weights to our overall health?
Yeah, you have to lift weights.
I mean, because I have like my mom, for example, loves walking, get her steps in.
She has to lift weights. She's how old, in her 70s?
66.
66. She has to lift weights.
Yeah, and I'm trying to push it.
There's all this stuff out there. Oh, I have osteoporosis. My doctor tells me I can't lift weights because I have osteoporosis. That is just I was going to use profanity, but I'm not going to use profanity. That is not acceptable.
Yeah.
Right? And how do we build people's bones? Right? It's not just an injection that will improve osteoporosis. Like, this is a significant problem. This is the lost generation, particularly for women, right? Is that 40s and 50s era, right? They're not getting their bone density checks until they're in their 60s. You can get a DEXA scan. Newsflash, you can get a DEXA scan to check your bone density at any age. We suggest that women start getting it done in their 40s. The amount of osteopenia that we're picking up in women in their 40s is staggering. And then we have, that would not have been picked up for another 20 years. Think about what we can do during that time window, right? To minimize progression and to reverse it. And we do, right? It's a very different story when we see someone in their 70s. We still can improve it. We still can maintain. And like really what we're trying to assess with bone density in women is, are you going to have a fracture when you fall? Because as you get older and you have a fracture when you fall, it becomes significantly less likely that you're going to recover from it. You break a bone, you end up hospitalized, you're bedridden, you get pneumonia, you don't recover, right? That happens with increased frequency as we age. Which is why we're paying so much attention to bone density.
So in older age, does muscle density determine how long someone's going to live for?
I feel strongly that the amount of muscle mass someone maintains as they age has a direct relationship to, one, their quality of life as they age, and two, how long they're going to live and how well they're going to live. Absolutely. It is a number one priority that we put on our clients in our practice, so much so that we have our patients use at-home body composition scales. Weight matters, right? But what matters more to me is what your muscle mass is, what your fat mass is, what your visceral adipose score is, and just as importantly, how you feel about your body, how you feel about you in your own clothes, how you feel about yourself, right? Those things matter a lot more to me than simply the weight. And that's why for a few $100, we give people an at-home scale. We don't have them check it every day. You check it every few weeks. If we're trying to hit a target, right, or every month to 2 months to keep yourself on pace, right? That allows us to ensure that you have an adequate amount of muscle mass so that we can build it for as long as we can. And there comes a time where it's really hard to continue to build more muscle mass. We're just trying to hang on to it, right? But we can tell through our nutrition and our training programming how well we're doing, right? So it's like, well, doc, what's the best training program for me, right? I can give you some generics just like we did with nutrition, right? Which are, right, you gotta do some strength training at least 2 times a week, right? Where you're lifting heavy stuff. Right, 3 to 4 times a week, you got to be doing some sort of like zone 2 cardiovascular work, right? And you can get that test. You can figure out your zones by going to the gym and getting tested. You've got to be doing at least 1 time a week, like a longer hike or movement program, right? Ideally with your family, ideally in nature, right? So a couple hour hike or something like that. Every day, I want you hitting 12,000 steps. No, non-negotiable, right? And that's like, it's about 5 hours a week-ish of training total, right? And that is what it takes. Like, that is what it takes for us to maintain a high, what's called VO2 max, which is your cardiorespiratory output. It's what it takes for us to maintain utilizable muscle mass, right? Which improves our ability to move and our ability to have, a high quality of life. If we fall, we won't break, right? It allows us to train for mobility, flexibility, reactivity, and that's it. Like, so starting that in your 40s or 50s as a routine makes it so much easier to continue as you age because it becomes part of who you are. The other thing that happens is once you start living that lifestyle, it becomes very clear that you are aging differently than others.
You probably start feeling younger if you're in the 60s and you start lifting weights.
Absolutely.
And increasing your steps and increasing your diet, right? A better balanced diet. I would think you would feel younger.
It's hard to maintain, which is why we, like you and I, are part of Fortitude Wellness, which is a group of individuals that are focused, right, on health and financial freedom. These are things that we need to be holding each other accountable to. And one of the best ways to do that is surrounding yourself with a community that's interested in it. Because the reality is as we move through life, not everybody's going to be on the same page. Not everybody's going to resonate with what we're talking about, right? I hope a lot of people are still listening, but many people might have just been like, oh yeah, this pod's all right, but this isn't for me, click, right? And that's perfectly fine, but they're not for me, right? You're for me. Yep. I want to be aging alongside people that are focused on community impact, on family, right? And in order to do so, right, you have to be in top physical, mental performance. Like you have to be focusing on it, just like we're focusing on other areas of our life.
Yeah,
so
we're not talking about training 30 hours a week.
No,
up your job.
not even close.
About 5 to 8 hours a week, depending on how much outdoor activity you want.
Yep.
Like I would like to increase mine to 10 or 12 hours a week and have more fun.
Of course,
and
yes.
Surf more,
yeah, play pickleball.
There you go. And I used to do a lot of that.
Yep.
And lately I'm like, wow, I've just been grinding and so focused on building that I've kind of forgotten a lot about the fun.
And you lose community that way.
You do.
A number of, I'm lucky because we have different tiers in our practice, right? That we have a concierge membership tier. It's expensive. And so people that are attracted to it are people that listen to my message, that want, like you mentioned, that level of care, as well as the level of expertise. I mean, I'm one of only, I think, 3,000, maybe 3,100 practitioners with the level of training and certification in functional medicine, longevity medicine in the entire world. Like, there are not many of me around at this level of training that are committed to that place of continuing education and learning and community that is excellent, that is top tier, right? There's a lot of people doing great work. I'm not saying you need to be there, but as anyone knows, right, in every profession, there's that piece, there's that place of certification or otherwise, that community that's just taking it to the next level. And that's what we are. That's what I'm a part of, intentionally.
Yeah, and you live and breathe it.
100%.
And that's the difference, right? It's not a job that you go to.
Yes.
It's something you live and breathe.
Yes. And one of the benefits of working with that level of a community in that concierge program is I get to see the routines of extremely high net worth individuals, of people that have built legacies that have made just exponential impact in the community, continue to do so, right? What's important to them, how they're managing their time, who they're hanging out with, and what they're doing, right, for their health and well-being. And pretty much all of them are doing something like, many of them play paddle, which is like kind of like our pickleball. A lot of them are doing an activity like that, whether it's one time a week or otherwise, because they find that level of activity and fun is very relieving and rewarding and stress reducing. And when they can look forward to that in their week, and after they finish it, they are more productive. Their brain is becoming more creative and effective as a result of it. So it's an interesting thing when we talk about time. It's like, I don't have time. And you're in an interesting spot because you're going through this reevaluation of your time. I'm excited to see in like 8 weeks what you think about your productivity and output compared to 3 months ago. Like, I'm just gonna be curious if you're like, yeah, man, like, if cash flow is similar, if feeling of purpose in your job is similar, even though maybe we reduced total work hours and we increased these other areas of your life.
Yep.
Like, I'm curious to see how that impacts your financial bottom line too. Yep. And I'm pretty confident that it won't be this like, well, doc, like, we dialed this in, but can't keep it up because, I'm losing the farm. Like, people work more efficiently.
Yep.
And like you said, when you have someone who's a provider helping you, that the time you're spending, that 5.5 hours a week, right, is super purposeful, and it's going to be results oriented. We're going to track it, and we'll see changes.
And I think a lot of it comes down to just my circle.
100%.
It's not just my doctor. It's my CFO, Greg, our mutual friend,
yes,
partner. Bo is a good friend of mine who does my videography stuff, and then all other people in my office. This is a co-working space, and I had a good conversation yesterday. It was like, I've been burnt out, just burning the candle at 3 different ends. And so now I'm like, great, so why don't I just reduce some expenses, spend less time grinding, and spend more time surfing and playing pickleball and more time with the kids. it's not going to change financially. It's just I'm going to sell some of the extra cars I don't want anymore, don't need them, and just get rid of some of the overhead that I don't need, right? It's kind of like, I think you go through that with life. You got to like balance your life and reevaluate yearly, monthly, 6 months. Like, what are my goals? I mean, it's something I want to do, sit down with my girlfriend is like, let's reevaluate goals. What do we want as a family? What do I want individually? Because I'm still an individual. I have goals. Most of it is to provide for family and leave something, and, but also I want the family to have a goal. What's the family goal? So like next year, my one of my goals is to go rent a house in Hawaii for a month. Right. Just leave for a month. And she's like, well, my mom's getting older. I don't know if I can leave for a month. Fly your mom over. Like, so it's just a goal I have. Do we do it? We'll see. But that's my target. I'm looking for a rental house in Hawaii for a month and just escape for a month.
Think about it. Think about yourself there, right? So say you get there, but you've sacrificed your health as a result. So there you are, right, in Kapalua, right, maybe at the Montage with your family because you made a ton of money and you're like, look, we're going big. We're going to rent one of these houses, right on the waterfront for a month. But there you are, overweight, in pain, right? Just not eating well, sleeping poorly. You're bitter, right? You're not happy, but you're there, right? Or you get there and you show up and you're sleeping well, and nutrition's on point. You got good energy. You're fit. And you're able to go out, you feel good with your shirt off, right? I know it sounds very superficial, but it's real, right? And you're there with your family and you're hanging out at the pool and you're like, yes, I got this. It's a very different feeling, right? And you could get there with both ways. And that's kind of where I think sometimes our limiting beliefs get in the way of action. I work for United and I fly so much and I do these red eyes, it's just impossible for me to get to where I need to get to, or whatever it is, right? It's not true. There are tools and tactics that we can use for everyone. There's a lot of do-it-yourself ways to kind of learn about those kinds of things, right? Like I know you ask people about some of the books that they like to share with listeners and ways that you can kind of and maybe that's like I like a lot of philosophy, but we could provide a couple of strategy books that people could look at if they wanted to learn about kind of how to do this on their own. We offer through our practice, right, the opportunities to work with coaches, right, alongside myself to really maximize your financial investment in your health, right? We can get a lot done through a partnership with a coach and a physician that allows you the best of both worlds. It's super cool, and we've got some amazing coaches and that come from different backgrounds. Some of them were registered nurses or otherwise that have been drawn to us because they also feel the calling that there's a better way. A better way to serve the community, and they see what we're doing, and it's really about our ethos, right? Our model, our core values. Like we are literally what you were mentioning, Curt. Like we want to be compassionate, we want to be caring, we want to create that space for people. We listen, right? I mean, look, you can stick your lab work into ChatGPT, and it's going to tell you something very similar to what I have told you because it's medicine, right? You don't. Medicine's not art, right? There's an art in how you deliver it, but the data is the data, and we all are coming from the same scientific literature in terms of how we implement and care for people, right? What you don't get, right, is that connection, and it's the connection that leads to the compliance, that leads to the shift, and over the years, right, it's going to change the infrastructure and the ethos of your community, of your family, and of yourself. That's what comes with like this work. And in my mind, I know it's kind of somewhat philosophical, but that's what's going to create you in your 70s. I mean, I see it. If you were to ask me like, oh, Dr. Adam, like, what's the thing that you see as a commonality in your clients that are in their 80s, even in their 90s? My grandpa's 96 years old, right? And the thing that I feel is common with all of them isn't necessarily like their nutrition, their movement strategy. It's that they maintain a passion for learning, And they maintain a commitment to learning about not just like their health, but technology and things in their surroundings, right? They're adaptable. Even at that age, they're maintaining adaptability. And that's what we're doing, right? We're creating this, if I think it and I action it, I create a shift. If I think it and action, create a shift. And that's what's happening in these older folks. I mean,
I totally agree. And I think like for someone like myself right now, I'm focused on decreasing my stress. I've always been not high stress, but just there's a lot going on with financial, and you got investors, you got deals, and you're flying for these rich people, and you're trying to do this. I'm trying to, build a guest house for grandma on my house. There's a lot going on. So I'm trying to reduce stress. And so what are some of the ways that stress can kill you, and what does stress do to the body?
In what most of us are managing today, like we think about threats to our health, right? Environmental exposures to toxins and chronic stress are probably the two biggest things that are going to negatively impact you as you move through life. Environmental toxins, meaning like exposure to kind of like heavy metals through maybe the fish you're eating, right? Or to plastics through using plastic, Tupperwares and spoons, or heating stuff up in plastic containers, that kind of stuff you got to sort of eliminate from your body, right? And that kind of inherently, people kind of know that instinctively. You're like, okay, yeah, I know this stuff isn't really super good for me. If the less I have exposure to this, the better. And stress is the same thing, except stress is kind of like this invisible, it's like in the air, versus that's like a tangible thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to replace my plastic, Tupperware for glass Tupperware, or I'm going to try to not use the microwave as much. I'm going to use a stovetop or whatever, right? It's tangible. Stress, it's not tangible like that. You're like, okay, I'm going to remove this stress thing from my life, right? What this feeling of stress does, right? And everybody knows the feeling. It can come from all different avenues, and it can affect people in different ways. But immediately, right? It's that feeling of like overwhelm. It's that increase in a heart rate. It could be a feeling of sweat. You get hot. It could be sweating. You could notice yourself being very reactive to people around you, something like things bothering you more than you're just like, hang on, why does that bother me so much? It shouldn't bother me as much, right? These are signs that whatever's happening in your life is resulting in physiological changes that are not beneficial to your health. What we see in blood chemistries that are a byproduct of stress is we see decreased production of testosterone. We see decreases in what's called an IGF-1, which is a marker of your growth hormone production, right? Both of which are important, right, for maintaining mood, muscle mass, libido, cognitive function, right? We see decreases in what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is basically like growth hormone for your brain. It allows your brain to create neural networks and think more efficiently and effectively, to expand, right, skills. We see upregulation of what are called inflammatory markers at baseline. This is called high sensitivity C-reactive protein is one. There are others that we check too. These are markers that we don't want elevated unless you're sick. If you're sick, we want your body to go, all right, we're going to mount a response, we're going to kill a bug, and then we're going to come back down. We don't want this stuff consistently elevated. That leads to, right, degeneration of tissue. It leads to plaquing of the arteries, right? It does not lead to good things. It's like running an engine too hot. That's what stress is doing. It's a general term, but it's a term, it's overwhelm, man. And there are a lot of changes that have happened in our life where we get a lot of stimulus in different ways. One, there's a ton more opportunity than we've ever had exposure to before. I mean, you and I, right, grew up learning about how to find information in a library. We learned the Dewey Decimal System. Many people in your audience might not even remember what a Dewey Decimal System is. That was our skill. The skill we were taught was how to go and look in this thing that you would go and you look for the number and you're like, oh, here's the number, and you go find the book and you had to find it. Now it's you don't need it. That's not a skill you need at all anymore, right? It's the opposite. Now what we are valuing is how to curate an information, right? But we're not trained in how to assess and assimilate what's coming in all these different avenues, right? Another example is we had a newscaster. Our whole life we had a newscaster that would interpret the news and give it to us, or we had a newspaper. Now we are a primary source for news coming in from all sorts of different areas, and we're expected to interpret it and then make a decision about how that impacts our lives and our families. We are not prepared for that, right? Nor does like maybe what's happening right in London right now affecting us, but it's showing up on our feed or whatever. So these things are causing physiological changes that are not helpful for you. Mm-hmm. The skill comes in this action-reaction moment, right? And there's training in what we can do. So I think that like when stress is like another one of these buzzwords, right? Like inflammation. You know, what it is it's literally, in my mind, it's like controlling the stimulus that's coming into you from different areas and then how it's impacting your body, right? Step one, what are the stimuli, right? You've got positive stressors. Working out is a stimulus, right? That's a positive stressor, right? Maybe learning a new skill, that's a stressor, right? Positive stressor. Focus and dedication to your work, right, can be a positive stressor, right? Now, if you're thinking about it, right, well, maybe the first one's like, oh, well, what if I overwork? Too strong. Well, what if I overtrain? It's not good either, right? What if I over try to learn something new? You get a headache, right? You ever try to learn something new and it's like, oh my God, I'm getting a headache. This is crazy, right? It's your brain saying like, whoa, calm down. So it's about balancing the stimuli. And we now have more and more stimulus that can come to us at any time of the day through our phones and through everything. So I think the first step whenever, and you did it, it's like, okay, let's do an audit. Let's audit what's happening in our day. We're gonna audit it and we're gonna figure out what's serving me and what's not serving me. And then we're gonna look at what's not serving me and figure out ways one at a time. This doesn't just happen overnight. Once again, it takes years to get here. It's gonna take months to get out of it, right? Even in the best case. And we figure out, okay, how can I start to augment and adjust these things, right? There's gonna be certain stressors that come into your life that you can't avoid, right? A family member gets cancer, or a friend, right? Someone's going through financial hardship. These are things that we wanna have the ability to accommodate and to be there for other people to support, right? But there are certainly things I think anyone could look at their life, like you just did, and I do on a regular basis, and say, hey, look, these are things that are in my life that are stressing me out. They're impacting me. I've got to figure out how I can sort of turn down the volume on these, offload them, remove toxic relationships, sell businesses that maybe just aren't, sure, maybe they could be profitable, but if they're draining your headspace, they're not allowing you to think into the future. Sell, take the money, right? And then move on. Mm-hmm. Because that wasted mental capacity, I guarantee you, right, is a far greater loss than what you would be gaining from hanging on to that property.
100%. That's exactly what I just did. And I am way less stressed now. We still took a nice profit. We thought we would make more. And I said, you know what? It's not worth the stress of the trade-off to increase the profit. It wasn't worth it. Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm still going to walk with a nice big check, but let's just cut it now.
Yes.
I want it out of the deal. I want it out of the emails, the phone calls, and now my phone doesn't ring as much, and I like it.
You've got the ability to start to think about where I want to put my time and energy and intention. And I know that you mentioned you want to put more time and energy and intention into the podcast and educating and empowering people. That's one of the reasons that we're here right now. Without you having offloaded some of your responsibilities, it wouldn't have been till August for us to have coordinated the time to collaborate.
Yeah, and it's important to me to educate because I'm finding success working with you because that's where I want my life. So I'm sure listeners out there can benefit, number one, from your information and your education that you provide. But number two, it's like maybe it'll trigger something like, wow, I never thought of that, because I didn't really think of that before meeting flying billionaires that have private doctors just like you, and they're getting blood work and they're getting MRIs. It's like an MRI full body scan is something that's on the table that I want to do in the next couple months.
Sure.
Because you said it's just a good track record or an indicator. Let's get a baseline of all your organs, where they're at. And I've had friends' dads die of brain tumors and cancer, and they're like, it's too late, because they went to the doctor when he felt something in his brain that wasn't right. Where if I can do the full body MRI and we do it every 2 years and we're looking at growths or certain things that we find and we can track that. So hopefully someday I never get cancer, but if I do, it's like we caught it so early that it's like the first stage and we can cure it. That's a big factor for me. So hopefully it'll inspire listeners. But let's do like a rapid fire 5 pretty simple questions. Just keep your answers short that I think will benefit people. The first one is alcohol bad for people?
Alcohol is definitely not good for people. If at most it's neutral, for the majority of the people, it's going to cause you more harm than good. You should find another way that is more health promoting to de-stress, to transition from work to home, to enjoy time with your spouse or friends. I would suggest that if alcohol is an important part of how you connect with your friends and family, like you should be looking at how you connect with your friends and family.
Yeah, or maybe if they have 6 drinks at dinner with their friends,
exactly,
just reduce it down to 1.
100%.
And that's what I've done, and it's worked great.
I think that's a great call. Moderation, more so than what we think about in moderation, is a good call. Use it for special events. Use it for that kind of thing, versus like I need a drink whenever I hang out with my in-laws, or when I go out with the boys every week we're crushing margaritas. Like that's a little bit different than for a celebratory experience.
Totally agree. And then another one is how bad are sugary sodas?
They're the worst. I would rather have you giving up your full sugar Coca-Cola. Can I say that?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I'd rather you giving up your full sugar Coca-Cola than your glass of wine on the weekend. It is by far the most catastrophic thing you can do to drink liquid, like 40 to 50 grams of liquid sugar on an empty stomach in the afternoon. That just goes instantly in your bloodstream, gets instantly stored in your liver. It is just not good for anyone.
Good to know.
Switch it out.
Yeah, and it's something I'm working on. It's kind of one of my things, but I'm trying to reduce that or quit. How important is sex for a person's health?
Sex is awesome. And it's one of these things that is an indicator of if you've got too much stress in your life, you're not going to be motivated to have sex. If your hormones are low, you're not going to be motivated to have sex. If your sleep is poor, you're not going to be motivated to have sex. And if you're not having sex, you're less motivated to have sex. Sex is one of these biomarkers that can give us an indication about overall health and wellness. Functionally, when a man ejaculates, right, you squeeze the prostate. And we have some studies that kind of show that the more you ejaculate, the less likely your prostate is to sort of grow over time. And when a woman orgasms, right, that contracts the musculature around the pelvic area. It moves sort of that blood flow that's kind of just sitting there when we're sitting or whatever. It moves it out. So from a pragmatic standpoint, there's some health benefits there too.
That's great. Do people that are overweight live shorter lives?
Typically because of the complications that they kind of have usually alongside their obesity, right? Usually there's hypertension, there's diabetes, there's plaquing in the arteries of the heart, right? And there's also just a lack of mobility, so they're gonna be more likely to fall or otherwise.
This is a good one. This is a question for me. How important are vacations and time away from work?
If you can take complete time, even if it's 1 day a week, 1 week every quarter, right? A few weeks a year, it is extremely valuable to, in this current day and age, to structure a digital detox, a full break. Yeah. It will reset you, and the time that you lose from a productivity standpoint, you will gain tenfold when you return. How many people have you talked to that when they go on vacation, when they come back, they have that pinnacle, that moment, that idea that changes everything for them? So many. It happens all the time.
Yeah, and I know for me, it's more important now where I didn't focus on that. And it's we're doing, once a quarter, we're on a 1 week family trip. Yeah, and it's important even to reconnect with the kids on a deeper level, and really remove my phone. We spend a lot of time in the pool. We like tropical. So we've done Hawaii and Cabo, and we're going back to Hawaii next month. And I find it very important, and it is starting to change the business, like you said, where I come back from that and I'm re-energized because of the break and the connection with the kids. And literally when we come back, I'm like, okay, it's time to plan the next one. Like, let's get the next one on the calendar. For me, I think having something on the calendar to look forward to work hard for, is important for everybody. And I think too many people take a week off work because of PTO and they don't go anywhere. You know, and even there's plenty of ways I think you can go on vacation locally. If you can't afford it or whatnot, like, hey, go somewhere cool and go on a free hiking's free.
Camp, go fishing. Here in San Diego, right? We live up here. You go to Coronado. It feels like you're in a completely different world.
Yeah. And it feels like you're away on vacation. Catalina is a cheap boat ride away on the ferry.
It's phenomenal.
I feel like you're in Italy. It's just a very cool spot. I got one other hot topic lately that we can end on. Is like Ozempic or GLP-1 is what they're known. I see them all over Instagram. I saw a fact, and I don't know where it's from, but 13% of people are on Ozempic or a GLP-1. So how can people use that safely?
It's all about what you do in and around the medicine, right? Probably the majority of those people are, from that statistic, are taking it for weight loss, right? What you have to do, if you're going to be on any type of medicine like that, you've got to really emphasize your protein intake so you don't lose muscle. You've got to start training, right? So that you can actually gain muscle and maintain it when you're on the medicine, right? Because the medicine's going to reduce your appetite, and then it gives you an incredible opportunity. It allows you to sort of think about your relationship with food. A lot of our clients that use these medicines will come to me like, dude, doc, I just opened up the pantry after I put the kids to bed. I wasn't even hungry. And then I just closed it and I thought, oh my God, this is what I've been doing. Why am I here? Why am I at the pantry right now after having put the kids to bed, right? Was that a reward for myself? Was that a stress release from getting the kids to sleep? What was it, right? And they have these moments where they can start thinking about and reflecting on their food story. So I would suggest that anyone who goes on a GLP-1, think about it in that context. Okay, this is an opportunity for me to look myself in the mirror and get a deeper relationship with, or deeper understanding of my relationship with food, right? Which is important. Then we've got to make sure we are training, right? So if you're not strength training, if you hadn't trained before, even if you're like, oh, I don't know how to train or whatever, if you're going to put the money towards a GLP-1, right? You've got to put money towards some form of a personal trainer, whether that's an online program, in person, whatever you can afford. It is worth it. You have to do it, or else you're going to lose the weight in places that you're not happy with, right? Everyone talks about, I lose weight from my butt, or I lose weight from my breasts, or I lose weight from my face, right? That won't happen to you if you're training consistently when you're on them and you're eating enough protein. Focusing on the protein, right? You're going to reduce your total caloric intake, but you can still eat an appropriate amount of protein, a good amount of healthy fats, and a safe and effective amount of carbohydrate, and hit your weight loss goals. That's what I would suggest. I think, it's become more and more accessible, the medicine, via sort of online doctors and also insurance coverage for a short period of time, neither of which comes with the level of coaching. Some of them will say, hey, we'll give you coaching, but it's not the level that you need to really realize the long-term benefits of these medicines, right? They do not have to be a medicine that you take for the rest of your life. It can help you support a goal that you're trying to achieve. And in doing so, right, you're going to gain the ability to strength train again. You're going to get a deeper understanding of your relationship, right, to food. And those are going to pay dividends for decades to come. That's where I think the real power of the medicine lies. And to be able to access that is through a partnership with someone, right? A partnership with someone when you're using the medicine.
So it's just a tool, it's a booster, but you really got to have exercise and diet in place to really utilize the tool.
It's a window of opportunity. You're given a window of opportunity to create significant lifelong change that will pay dividends for decades to come. So thinking about the decision to start a GLP-1 with that context and putting the things in place that you need to in terms of time, right? And professionals, family support, right? That's the way to use this medicine in the most effective way. The other thing that we do in our practice is we dose people at really low strengths of this medicine. We're able to achieve significant results in the lower quartile of these drug dosing strategies, which is something that requires a little more personalization than what you might get from your primary care physician prescribing you this medicine or from an online group. But just as a heads up to people, you don't necessarily need to stick to the standard dosing protocol, which in about 3 months gets you to this relatively high dose. You can stick to these lower dosing strategies, right? It allows you to use the medicine for longer, saves you money, and you get an incredible output nonetheless, especially if you have these tools on board.
Yeah, I love that answer. I have multiple friends that were overweight that were on it, and I don't know if they made lifestyle changes, but I was always curious if they don't eat right and they don't exercise already, they have to make those lifestyle changes like completely, or else they're just going to gain the weight back, and then it's a waste of an experimental drug, really. It's a waste.
And that's the criticism about the medicine. The criticism is like, well, people go through this, they lose a bunch of weight, then insurance no longer covers it or whatever, right? Or they decide to stop and they gain all the weight back. Well, that we don't see that in our practice. We have not had a single person experience that in our practice. And we've had hundreds of people on GLP-1s. They work with me, they work with our coaches. None of them, zero, are back to where they started by any means, right? It's a remarkable tool. And when you hear the stories from their experience with it and how it's impacted themselves, their families, how they relate to the world, right? In the beginning, I was kind of like, oh man, like another weight loss drug, right? Well, let's wait for the coin to turn and figure out what's going on. Like, what's the problem here, right? Or it's just another crutch, or another replacement for people to do the right thing. Like all this, stigma and dogma. I mean, we get it in the functional medicine community too, right? Food is medicine, right? It's all you need, right? Well, it's like, look, this tool used in low doses as part of a comprehensive program is shifting people's lives forever. And that's pretty powerful. That's what we're seeing in our practice. And I hope that anyone who's interested in using the GLP-1, don't be afraid of it, but do it in like a way of stewardship, right? Realize that this is a tool, it's a powerful tool, and take every day that you're on it to slowly work toward the foundational changes in your mind, in your body, in your spirit, right? For that long-lasting transition. It's a shift. That's what's
great advice. Well, we'll wrap it up with we discussed some philosophy books. I like to leave these. I'll leave them in the comments of the show so people can look them up. But what are 2 books that changed your life, or you really think people should read and they could really benefit from?
Sure. Well, to keep to the theme, right? I think if someone's interested in understanding a little bit more about what we do as functional medicine doctors, as naturopathic doctors, they can read a book called Outlive by Peter Attia. It's a book that kind of outlines sort of the history of medicine, where we are today in terms of our ability to test and track your health, and some of the tools that we have available to us now that we didn't before. It gives a good context of what's available to you, what you could get out of your health care. And then to touch on, sleep, right? And the importance of sleep in our conversation. There's a book by a doctor named, or a researcher, Matthew Walker, on sleep. And that book is just a remarkable summary of the benefits of sleep, why we should prioritize sleep. And similar to Outlive, like why sleep has been sort of neglected in our society, right? Like why our kids start school at 8 a.m. and they want to sleep till 11 a.m. every day anyways, right? And like where that all came into play. And it also gives some actionable tips And then of course, like I would just encourage anyone who listens to the podcast, right? Like I'm willing to do this if you are, but like if you have any questions about what we talked about, this was very general, broad strokes. Like we get very detailed. We have answers to everything from, is this supplement good or bad for me? Like, where do I find doctors like you? Like anything you want to know about that's in and around this space, if you're interested in it, just send a message, to Curt, and we'll get back to you with it. And if we get some consistent themes, maybe we'll do a quick Q&A where we answer those questions specifically, so that people can continue to learn and be empowered to make the changes. Because I think that's what I want.
Yeah, it's the whole point of bringing you on and working with you and sharing my experience
100%.
and promoting you. So where can people find you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so our practice is called Blueprint Wellness. You can find us at www.blueprintwellness.org. And you can find me at Dr. Adam Silberman on Instagram. It's burgeoning. We're putting more time into it. And then you can literally, because we have, concierge memberships, you can email us at clientconcierge@gmail or at blueprintwellness.org. And we'll get back to you anyway that way.
Yeah, and you guys can always send me a message. Happy to make the introduction
Totally.
to Dr. Adam, who I work with. Well, hey, thanks for your time and really just pouring into this, because I learned a lot. I can't wait to read those 2 books because they're a prime focus for me right now, especially with 2 littles at home, trying to sleep more. And I look forward to that. So thanks for spending your afternoon with us and educating listeners, and look forward to continually working with you.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good week.